So, Richard, it's I think 6 years since 13 Rivers, and then Ship to Shore comes out. How do you decide it's the right time to put out an album? Is that just because you have a kind of accumulation of songs?
That's usually the way it works, yes. We were stalled a couple of years there by COVID. So, yeah, for well, actually 2.5 years, there was no live work. And it wasn't really possible to make a studio album either. So I'm just sitting at home writing. And so I wrote that album. I wrote the next album. I wrote the album after that.
So
So,
you've got enough songs for another two albums.
oh my good, yes, yeah, I'm so far ahead. I can't believe it. Yes, um, but that's the problem. I mean, it is 6 years between albums, and it's crazy. I usually try and do every 2 to 3 years, which seems to be what the market can bear, basically. Um,
So you've got this great list of songs. How did you narrow it down to the ones that you've included on Ship to Shore?
I think you look for some commonality between them, and something that's going to sound cohesive as a record as well. So maybe the drastically slow ones, you leave for another project. Stuff that's too personal sometimes you leave for another project. Yeah, you want songs that communicate at a certain level, and stuff that this the songs sound like they're sort of brothers and sisters. That they wouldn't belong on another record. That actually should be unique to this one.
It sounds to me as though you're as prolific as ever in terms of songwriting. Has the process changed over the many years that you've been doing it? Is it easier or harder now to write a song?
I think it's harder and easier. I think I can get to the place where you feel creative or where inspiration starts to come in. I can short circuit that process to some extent. I think it gets harder because you have an idea and you think, well, I wrote that song already. I've already done that. And although fans say, oh, why don't you do another song like blah blah blah, and I'm thinking, well, I've done it. There's no point, in just repeating yourself. As they say, steal from everybody except yourself. And I think that's good advice. So I think you just look to be different, and it gets harder and harder to be um, different every time, every record.
You still seem to be drawn to some of the darker things in life. I'm thinking about The Fear Never Leaves You, which is, I think, about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, for a
Yeah.
soldier. What was the inspiration for that?
There was a documentary on TV about the Falklands War, and I thought, well, that's a bit of a minor skirmish, and not something that we think of as being um, deeply traumatic. But this program was about the SAS, and you think, oh, these are tough guys, they can handle anything. But however long ago it was, I mean, decades down the line, these guys are suffering, and they can't sleep at night. They can't sit with their back to the door, all this sort of classic PTSD stuff. And sometimes I feel for the soldier, not necessarily for the generals and not necessarily for the politicians that put them into life-threatening situations. But it takes courage.
And you've written a song called "Life's a Bloody Show," which I don't know. Reading between the lines, does it have a bit of Trump about it?
I think, yeah, Trump type. But it's not really about Trump, but it's about your alpha male, bully, basically, I suppose, really. And it puts it more in the guise of probably a show business figure, some of whom I have known to be of that ilk. And it's a blend of different personalities, really, that I've known. I've kind of compressed it into one song. Yeah, but it's just about all that, insincere, self-serving stuff that you find in the world, increasingly, I might say.
Do you get depressed by the politics? I mean, I wonder, living in America, whether you ever consider, leaving America because of the terrible state of the politics there and moving back to the UK.
Absolutely. Yes. The answer is yes, yes, yes. I tend to go between the UK and the US, and I've tried to spend more time in the UK these days, because America is a bit nuts, and it is worrying. And another term of Trump could mean the end of basically democracy in America. I'm not sure it was ever that democratic anyway, but they see themselves as the democratic leaders of the world, and I think if Trump gets back in, then that's really gonna be the end of something.
And
And
will that would be the end of your time in America, do you think?
well, I'm not sure he's going to be tolerant of critics. I'm not sure he'd be tolerant of anything vaguely democratic, basically. So you could see, like public radio stations disappearing. You could see the New York Times getting shut down, all that kind of stuff. Any voices of dissent could disappear, and we end up with a kind of a Putin-esque America.
I suppose it's difficult for you anyway to decide where home is because you're constantly or you're often on the road, and you've written about that experience in We Roll. And
Yeah.
there's the lines. I must be crazy, but I'm doing it again. Suitcase living since I don't know when. Do you really feel like that when you set off on the road, or do you feel a sense of anticipation?
Oh, absolutely. Anticipation. I mean, I love it. It's half my life for as long as I can remember, really. That's why COVID again was bizarre because, uh, musicians like me had never really stopped, since we were teenagers, where we've been on the road, you work for a while, you get a few weeks off, you just want to get out there again. For me, the great joy is performing to an audience, to a live audience. And, you go through, airport delays and traffic jams and, you know, hideous hotels and whatever, just to do that, to have that wonderful experience of communicating to a live audience. Um, but mostly, but we try not to kill ourselves traveling. We try to, to make it reasonably comfortable. And but I think almost anybody will tell you the big payoff is just getting out there and playing live.
I saw you at the Portsmouth Guildhall, which was a fantastic gig, and I noticed it was wonderful to see Zach Hobbs, your grandson, on guitar there, and it's increasingly a sort of family affair, isn't it? How does
It
it
is,
feel to
yeah.
be playing on stage with Zach?
It feels great. I mean, Zach is a seriously good musician, seriously good musician. Um, and steals, mercilessly from me. I mean, he's all the licks I thought were mine are now Zach's, and I can see a sort of a sea change coming somewhere where it's the Zach Hobbs show, and they trundled me out for a song or two,
You're doing the backing.
the old geezer, yeah.
But and obviously you've just recently been at the Albert Hall celebrating your 75th birthday
Yeah,
with Cami, and Linda came on to sing I Want to See the Bright Lights Tonight. How did that
yeah.
feel?
Well, that's great. It's wonderful. Family's the best. That's the best musical experience, I think. And I'm deeply proud of my children and grandchildren. I love what Cami and her husband James do. They're in a band called The Rails, and that's just one of my favorite musical in incarnations. Yeah, and there's that sort of vocal blend you get with families, the Everly Brothers syndrome, where everything just sounds so blended. It's that the family larynx, you might call it. But
Did you
yeah,
play any hand in the fact that they've all turned out to be musicians? I mean, were you pressing guitars into their hands from the moment they were born, or did you advise them to kind of stand back from the business?
no, I said, don't become musicians, don't don't even think about it, become accountants, lawyers, um, dentists, earn some money. But to their credit, it's in the blood. That's what they do. And um, I think the times I tried to teach people like Teddy, to play the guitar, he'd say, "Oh, I know how to do that. I
It's a
know
bit
how to
like
do that."
getting your dad to teach you to drive the car, isn't it? I mean,
Exactly,
you have
So
to
I,
get somebody else.
so I just said, okay, fine. I'll send you off for lessons somewhere else. Yeah, yeah. They're kind of know-it-alls, my kids.
And now, of course, your wife, Zara Phillips, is a very big part of what you do, and she appears very prominently on the record singing.
Yeah.
And I think you've written a song inspired by her, Singapore Sadie. Uh, Tell us
You could
about
say.
that.
Um, well, I just say, I think she gets a lot of envy I mean, as far as I can see, she's good looking, she's talented, she sings well, and I think she gets resented a lot and envied a lot. And it's a song to her credit, I think. It's a song that says, she rises above all the back chat and the slander, and just gets on with it, and she does a great job.
And what was it like when you first played it to her?
She said, "Oh, is that it? Is that the best you can do?" Well, I think I presented the song to her actually without saying who it was about, and so I think she was kind of two-thirds through learning the song, but before she realized that she was actually in it.
It must be a wonderful moment for somebody, though. I mean, in a way, it's a love song, isn't it? It must
It's
be
a
a
love
wonderful
song, yeah.
moment for her to have had a song written by you about her, and then to be invited to sing on it.
I should darn well hope so. Yeah, it's a song of admiration, and and yeah, again, it's a family thing. I mean, we love to sing together, and she comes to a lot of solo shows now. She does other things as well. She's an activist, an adoptee, activist. She writes plays, novels, God knows what. So she's not always available, but when she is, I love her to come along and sing.
Some people at the age of 75 are putting on their cardigan and slippers and going out to the greenhouse and doing the garden, but you show absolutely no signs of slowing down. Is there any thought of retirement in your mind ever?
Not really, no. No, I'm too busy to think about retiring. And I don't own a cardigan. I might have a pair of slippers, and I do the garden anyway. I'd love a greenhouse. That'd be just so nice. Um, if this album does well, I can afford a greenhouse.
Richard, this album is doing incredibly well, I can tell you, because it's in the chart. Thank you very
Hey,
much for joining us.
well, thank you. Thanks so much.